burung nana ying di pun sedang ban pun isya kiwe kat syaba pisang nadu ka mentah adu ka lasai walawai jong piti kan yai pernai nadu ka mentah adu ka lasai walawai jong piti kan yai pernai
Prosila Kharsie will be 100 years old in a few months. She has 7 children, 54 grandchildren and 15 great-grandchildren. She also has a beautiful traditional Khasi house in Moflang village near Shillong, the capital city of India's northeastern state of Mechalaya. And she has her memories of a simpler time in the golden bygone days when rituals were sacred, traditions were sacred, forests were sacred.
She said that she said that it is completely changed, but before it was quite safe. When we go anywhere, we are free. No, she said that before the forests were thick, but now it becomes very few because most of them they cut the trees.
Yo kan kerto kan pai shala din trai Yo baro ya piti kin kan riu kai
Northeast India is considered one of the world's hotspots of biodiversity. Yet the rate of biodiversity loss is shocking. With forest cover decreasing and many plants and animals added to the endangered species list each year. Currently, 60% of the forests in the Northeast are in various stages of degradation. With the demands of modernization, increased consumerism and population pressures, the forest is seen by many as a short-term commodity to be exploited, rather than a valuable resource to be protected and sustainably managed. Although change is inevitable in the Northeast, like elsewhere in the world, some things don't change. This toll gate is the entry to Moflang's 500-year-old sacred forest, revered and preserved according to traditional beliefs, customs and religious rituals. The intrinsic bond that a Khasi has with the forest can be rooted in their indigenous, religious and cultural traditions, as well as their livelihood and survival needs. The revival campaign for conserving natural resources by integrating traditional and contemporary practices in Meghalaya is fast gaining ground and credibility. Information about the total loss of sacred clan, community and reserved forests in the state is scanty, since many of the forests have not been mapped, classified or formally registered. Since 92% of Meghalaya's forests are community-owned, grassroots governance is very much the order of the day. Today's ritual begins with a prayer that is recited before entering the sacred forest. These men are the custodians of this 75-hectare sacred forest. They are members of the Mawphlung leadership, one of the 3 different local government institutions in Khasi culture, the other 2 being the Sardar and the CM systems. All 3 traditional institutions function at the grassroots level, administering both people and natural resources throughout Mechalaya. Trig Lingdo is the religious, civil and judicial head of the Mawphlung leadership, assisted by his mintris or ministers. This ritual is performed annually for giving thanks or to pray for peace and protection of the Khasi community.
Dear God, creator of the universe and nature, we bow in front of you on behalf of all beings, black, white, Khasi, foreigners. Protect and guide us, make us prosperous and healthy. Water is essential to our survival. The grass and leaves clean and protect us. The rice is for our livelihood. We offer these prayers as thanksgiving and to ask for your protection, for health, wealth, prosperity and harmony for all. This is a sacred forest. In this forest, you cannot cut any tree. Even the fruit you eat has to be eaten inside the forest. It is dangerous to carry anything outside this forest that has been sanctified by our ancestors. If you do, ill health and negative phenomena will occur. We tell tourists and outsiders to respect the forest. If we revive all these forests, the government will recognize our efforts. We are reviving the forest since it will benefit the next generation, bring back pure air, rain, and keep disease away.
This forest originally belonged to the Blas, one of the Khasi tribes, but the Lingdos wanted to take over the forests from the Blas. To settle the dispute, 2 trees were planted, Dieng Swing and Dieng Sohmet. If the trees survived, the Lingdos would take over the forest from the Blas and make it a sacred forest. The trees survived, and the Lingdos took over the protection of the forest. The Mawphlung leadership want to preserve what their ancestors have done with social fencing by having only one area for collecting firewood, allowing access strictly by need.
There are thousands of medicinal plants and herbs here. We can eat them inside, but cannot take them out or sell them. There are herb species here that can cure where allopathy cannot. Now we realize that our forests are shrinking and we are trying to preserve it and increase it. At Hima Mawphlung, we pledge to preserve this forest, grow more trees and ask the government for help.
This forest makes a good eco-tourism site since it already attracts tourists. But while serving as guides and explaining their traditions, the local people need to protect their forest from too much use and possible abuse.
These stones are boundaries and protect the forest all round. These stones kept by our ancestors indicate to everyone the foundation, how it all started. They demarcate the sacred forest and its sanctity.
In northeast India, tribal people have always played an important role in protecting and managing their forests. In contrast to the rest of India, where the state has legal control over most of the forests, in Nagaland and Meghalaya, over 90% of all forests are controlled by communities. Mawphlang's revival movement of forest conservation begins in this tiny house. 36-year-old Tambor Lingdo is both the president of the Mawphlang Village Council and secretary to the Lingdo Council. A graduate in Khasi literature, he works as a clerk in a government office by day, teaches language at night school, and dreams of Mawphlang leading the way in community-based forest conservation.
This is our Mawphlang Sacred Forest, which we have been preserving it from the time immemorial by our forefathers. And even the other Himas also, they say they look towards Mawphlang because they still can have this sacred forest and thick community forest. So we are looking forward that in 10 years' time, the goal will be, that means we will reach that goal that all this area will become green and will become healthy.
Community Forestry International, a non-profit environmental organization, is working with local universities, NGOs and state forest departments in providing support to the Mawphlang Lingdoship to expand its network. Tambor's day begins early with a visit to a neighboring village. After meeting the headman, an impromptu meeting begins.
The reason for this meeting is forest preservation. This is the Hima secretary, Tambor, who has come to explain. Even though our ancestors had stringent rules and regulations, we didn't pay much heed to them and lost our forests. Now we will all start an awareness campaign for our livelihoods and also to promote tourism through the sacred forests. We should not allow outsiders to misuse these forests.
We will support any cause good for the community.
I am grateful that you have all agreed to follow the path set by our forefathers. Go in peace and good health.
When the community is involved, we all of them become the owner of the forest. We can decide among ourselves what is to be done and what not to be done. So if we conserve in that way, that all the things we needed for our family matters, then we can use those. Unless we have the economic benefit from that, we cannot really tell people, or we cannot really insist them to conserve forests here.
The Mawphlang mantra for forest conservation is a simple yet effective blend of traditional wisdom and new community strategies. This practical philosophy, practiced by the remote and relatively tiny Mawphlang Lingdoship, comprising just 18 villages, could well be the starting point of a much larger movement of indigenous people whose forests and cultures are becoming endangered.
We have to educate people, even school children, and we have to have the people's participation that we call the social fencing, that we need that all should be participating in that way so that we can preserve and conserve this forest.
For Tambor and the 1,000 people of Mawphlang, today is an important day. They are hosting the first ever community network meeting of people from 7 neighboring Himas, a total of 42 villages, to strengthen old traditional systems while devising new and innovative strategies that help them respond to environmental issues, forest department's requirements and the government's policies.
I have come here as secretary and representative of the Lingdos. This morning, we are going to discuss how to form a network to work together. We need to work out how we are going to preserve the forest and vegetation for our benefit and that of the future generation. We need to get back our forest cover and many medicinal plants and herbs. These herbs will soon become extinct. If we preserve the forest, all of us will be protected from the rains and storms and will have good health. Otherwise, we will have to search for doctors. I am glad to see women here. Mothers are very important. For example, if the father brings the rice and the mother doesn't cook it, what use is the rice?
Most of the forests have been destroyed, and what we have left, we should preserve. We should also see that shade and rain is provided by trees for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
We need participants from all sides, youth, ladies, ministers, who will volunteer. We have decided we should preserve our forests like our ancestors did. Everyone should participate to protect Mother Earth and stop the destruction of the forest.
A more select conclave begins an hour later, with the 7 lingdos from 7 himas promising widespread people's participation in forest conservation. Consensus and acceptance follow speeches that reflect a high level of awareness.
The government is interested in afforestation and environment. We have to see that no plastics enters the earth, the plants and forests. Global warming is due to plastic and the air we breathe out. I am very happy with the way Mawphlung is preserving its sacred forest. We too have our sacred forest. We should let our trees grow old and stop jhum cultivation. Today is a new beginning. For our people, it's a revival of old traditions.
Abala seng ladang ya ka ip ki himang idon kami ki klau kitap kum kawa ki merat ki mereng baro dekumta
we need the forest, the water, birds, animals. Each network of each hima should be headed by one person so that the government doesn't intimidate us.
This is a rare insight into the functioning of the highest level of traditional governance in Meghalaya, the Dorbar. This cry, uttered at the beginning and end of a Dorbar, is to signify that the Dorbar is in progress or has ended. Presided over by the Lingdo and comprising members of the Ilaka or Lingdo Council, the Dorbar is normally an annual and elaborate affair. For instance, if a consensus is not reached, a Dorbar can go on for days. But this one, focusing only on forest conservation, is short, informal and full of lively banter.
Ndok nga kai buang tu ana bu kidang chidong la don like ngang ong bu kasor kar menta Kalau ai kita beri syarat semula kisnong, kita mesti dah stop. Dan sorkar ai, kai ke sistem bukin serah, katlau kin bu terkait masai, kin pelokas dah tu. Mana kedong don masai bet. Kata ke, tengah kaya mencur pedang bun ya, kang mek ni pom di. Beri kang ke di pedang ni thok, ngatuk sak. Tangang lu sak. Kerja presiden sadak serak long. Kamu.
This is grassroots democracy in its purest form. Any proposal for forest conservation or protection has to have the legal sanction of the Dorbar. This is the key to a long-term sustainable movement, traditional institutions reviving their own traditions.
Di sebar lima pihon sampai bak berkoi ta. Pihon. Dadar mulai pelat ya ta dia wan a kerpot ya ngal ndo bat kimen ben dan kuna ta bro persia. Tapi pihon ya ta. Pihon. Kubli subuhan kan ke Dorbar kelawan.
Even though Khasi society is matrilineal, with the youngest daughter inheriting both family wealth and responsibilities, women are not allowed to attend the Dorbar. An old Khasi saying goes, if the hen crows, the whole world will end. Forests, sustenance, conservation, livelihood, tradition, culture, forests. The age-old cycle continues, but with renewed awareness and vibrancy. Three generations of the Kharshiye women explain the unique Khasi way of life, to respect nature and follow the path of righteousness taught at the mother's hearth.
She said that she wants that the children should have good manners like they used to have. To know people and to know also God, and that is very important. She used to give the moral lessons to the children, to the grandchildren like that. She used to remind you should remember to be good. You should remember to obey your mother like that.
Rimpe email means the mother's heart, where it started. Everything, the development of the character, personality, everything. It started from the mother's heart. We never forget our values, our culture, our way of life, right from what we inherit from our forefathers. Everything which is good from today's world, and along with our tradition, that will make a society progressive.
Today, as Madame Kharshiye looks back, even though times have changed, her legacy will endure. In fact, the oral tradition she handed down is being strengthened by a new tradition. Practical, informal education given to Mawphlang's younger generation about their heritage. Linking forests to culture, value education to natural resource management for the future custodians of these resources.
Kalau labu daki mai temian patemian uji kebena dok mencua kebo kila penong yakam kalau pentang hang nei ladon kirengkau kibasa ya bukan pekin jengok ya nei klau kumjuk ya yiba rok khoi bisyong po hima Mawphlang te hakane ke klau kinjuk sya ya no bun khet di khet sla yo le se fi kwa bun khet ni sla timun penjak long kum nei bat hang nei ladon sibon ba ki di don saujat ki di bu hang nei po klau ho ko perthib rok win udon syu hang nei po klau dang don rok ki taudi ke bu ha ke perthib rok khoi udon syu lai jat nei ta ki taudi hang nei ki dang don ni satunat be bendon ke nei klau satunat
hakani klang ngem syaban pomdi ngem syaban kedik senti bat ngem syaban penjabo ek bro Ketika jakang kebadan kita yang kisiat kita sentiau kiskun, but kislang kita sembai baru.
You like to go in the forest?
Yes.
Secret forest is that forest that we have a sacrifice in 1,000 years ago, and we are proud of this forest.
We've done a series of awareness campaigns with the community in Moplang. What we thought we need to stress is basically, ensuring that this knowledge which the present generation has, that is passed on into the younger generation. And one way to do about that is to concentrate on nature education. We take them in forests, have them study the plants, species, animal species. Most importantly is making them realize the ecological benefit of the forest, using ecotourism as a vehicle for reaching to the younger generation.
This now have become the heritage site for us, that we want to have the eco trail by converting this into a trail. Its length is around 14 kilometers connecting Maflang and Shirapanji. So many people used to come here. We offer them the kite to take them from there up to the place. It is a very nice place, and even the 10 years boy can go.
Umden, 30 kilometers from Shillong in Ribhoi district, is another area where a revival of traditional institutions for managing natural resources is taking place. Dolin Malai is a 65-year-old retired school teacher who has become the unsung keeper of the flame in his village. In his retirement, he is writing a history of Umden and its lineage, one of the first written records of its kind.
When I go to house and house visit with all people, then I used to record where our people come, how many generation are, what's their name. This is the history of here in Umden by our all CM. First king, second, third, fourth, fifth. Then I will try to put in a book.
Dolin also experiments with agro-farming techniques on his own farm to help conserve natural forests. He is now being sponsored by Community Forestry International and is in the process of developing a network of community groups in collaboration with the local forest department.
Forest conservation needs the shading to cover the land, the soil, and to defend the erosion. So when we get to plant this vanilla along with cardamom, the need of that crop, we will not cut the trees because we need the shading. Black pepper is more or less 100 per kg. It will be a great benefit for the farmer. I call all the villagers, and then they cooperate me. So now, little by little, I think it maybe succeed. When I count the area covered by the clan forest, community forest, and the sacred crops, they are more or less 500 hectares. Come here in Umden itself, and then we go to the east, and here we come, and this is the sacred forest of Nongba Nongtulu.
Today, Dolin and his friend Matong have organized an informal celebration in honor of Umden's ancient sacred forest. The CM, who is the local leader in Umden, leads the way. Unlike the earlier informal Dorbar in Moflang, Since Umden is just beginning to revitalize its traditional system of forest conservation, this gathering is an effort to start rebuilding community interest and participation.
I have 32 villages in my care. Our most important task is fencing to protect the forest. We also need roads. We cannot do it alone. We need the government's help.
A young range officer from the Forest Department, Nongpo, Kharkongar, joins the discussion.
We will support you to protect the forest. I am very impressed by the good response from the people. We all have to work hard together. This is a symbol of God who protects the entire Hima from enemies and illness. We perform rituals every 5 years.
Pride in their distinct ethnic identity is every Khasi's prerogative, even those who identify with it part-time.
The present of this generation, they cannot know exactly what is the traditional dress. On the last generation, they doesn't have even this camera to collect the snap, so we can even see all those dress. Actually, we doesn't have books exactly written on our tradition. I learned it from my grandma. So say, I'm not reading it through books. They are telling it to me. Yes, and then I just keep it in my mind. And then when I get my children or my grandchildren, I can tell it exactly. I can convey the message, the same thing.
You don't like to wear traditional Khasi dress?
I love to wear this. We feel good wearing the traditional dress, but it's only for special occasions. Some rich families have preserved their dresses, but the general public cannot afford them anymore.
Everybody, they like to preserve their own tradition. They like to preserve their own forest. Who doesn't like to preserve?
But will they work for it?
If a leader is there, everybody, they are ready to follow him.
This drum was last beaten in 1958 for the Shat Nong Tulu, a traditional ceremony. Dolan beats it once again to herald the symbolic revival of a bygone era.
The custom of beating the drum is thousands of years old. It is in our blood. We feel good when the drum is beaten. It moves people.
We have 27 types of beads in these Khasi hills. So especially we want to enrich the Khasi cultures and heritage, which nowadays seems to go day by day.
These students of the Jibon Roy Creative Academy in Shillong, run by the Seng Khasi organization, are also a bridge between the past and the future, keeping alive the traditional arts that Khasis were skilled in, such as archery, dancing, music. This warrior dance symbolizes the man-woman relationship in earlier times. The Seng Khasi organization was formed in November 1899 by 16 enterprising young men who wanted Khasis to come together to preserve their culture. Jibon Roy was their patron. This is his granddaughter, Sitimon Savian, founder principal of the Seng Khasi Higher Secondary School till 1972.
This is the first organization started and organized by the Khasi themselves. And so because of the Seng Khasi, now we still have our people who are still in the old belief, and all these traditions dance, archery still exists till today. To take a Khasi drum inside the church was a sacrilege, you see, but now they're introducing the drums together with the hymns and all. Oh, this is the book. From this book you get not only the moral teachings, but also you get, it reflects the culture of the Khasis, to be followed. I think these books are being prescribed in all the schools.
For us, etiquette is not mere social grace. It's a way of worship. We eat properly, we dress properly, we talk properly. That we're worshipping all the time. That means we truly respect Ublay, God.
Our church is very much Khasi. Our Archbishop is Khasi. Our provincials of organizations and religious orders are tribals of the place. I think the church is very much rooted into the culture, promotes that culture.
The forest symbolizes different things for different people. For the very poor and marginalized who live off the forest, it satisfies daily needs of survival, water, fuel wood, produce. For a vast majority of rural Khasis whose dependence on the forest is more indirect but very real, it has many sustainable spin-off benefits. For the commercial-minded, the forest is a rich source of timber to be sold to fulfill personal aspirations. Everyone wants a piece of an already depleted resource. The fledgling movement for forest conservation in Meghalaya has a formidable task ahead. But its biggest strength is its indigenous character. Traditional people reviving their own culture and their own forests.
When I was a kid, the places along the Shillong Guwahati road, both sides were covered with dense forests. And now when you go, the hills are bare. So just from that example, I can jolly well imagine what's happening in the rest of the state. Tremendous amount has been lost. Once economic value of timber came in, you started seeing privatization of these forests, you start seeing exploitation of these forests. If you bring in a participatory mode of development, where everyone is involved, where the question of gender initiatives and gender empowerment also plays a very big part, where you bring in the women in your decision-making process. I think here is where you bring in the element of transparency, you bring in the element of accountability. I think to a large extent you will be able to push in whatever agenda you have in mind.
Political parties, they have all spoken about direct funding to the traditional institutions. This is something which till a few years ago were all saying is not possible. So today all the villages, today we are communicating, the network is very strong and we've informed them.
I think the modalities that the government is trying to work out of how to go about it.
Traditionally as it is, the institutions already have, since time immemorial, their own unique way of preserving biodiversity. All matters are decided by consensus and referendum. Another unique thing about these institutions is partyless. So any decision made is in the interest of the community. There is no such thing as a yes vote or a no vote.
These people, they've been living in these areas for ages. They have a lot of knowledge, they have a lot of wisdom. Now, if you bring in a livelihood alliance, meaning thereby that you have various stakeholders and various partners who are members of this alliance. There might be government, there might be NGOs, it might be civil society, it might be these traditional institutions you're talking about, it might be women people, it might be outside agencies. They all come in and each has a role to play. So I think this is where the answer lies.
What we want to do is to have the the community forestry organization, so that we can come to work together, so that it can give the presentation to the government or to any financial institution, so that we can get some aids or some grants like that, so that we can give incentive to people.
My dream is that all the forests should be cover the soil.
The stories of Mawphlung and Umden illustrate how communities can protect their watersheds and biodiversity by revitalizing their culture and institutions. In this way, the rich ecology and remarkable cultural traditions of Northeast India may be sustained for future generations. Over the centuries, different generations of children have played near these stones and hopefully will continue to play. These giant megaliths are the silent witnesses to changing times, changing forests, and changing cultures. As the communities of the Northeast adapt themselves to the 21st century, many of their values and traditions remain unchanged and undisturbed. A constant reminder to every Khasi of the wisdom learned at their mother's hearth.
What you pathar madai yo kan paisa bama baka yeng kasem kan amjad kan ampra idei ru banya hagalan ti babha baka yeng kasem kan amjad kan ampra idei ru banya hagalan ti babha kumno ba pin bam kumno ba pin di kumno ba pin yai bat kumno pin ki kumno ba pin nang kumno ba pin start kumno ba pin pa mai bat pin kaji para ku persatu ya ngap menta men syuk do pen iya ki jing shisha